Hello, welcome to One Moment Wiser. This is Christy Bridges, and I have a special guest today, my friend Mary Bruce. Now, if you haven't tuned in before, I'm Christy Bridges from One Moment Wiser, and I teach Christians to become authors because God uses our voices to reach people in unique ways. And I met Mary at the She Speaks conference this year. And this was really neat, you guys, because she has such a cool story that I would never have heard had she and I not both decided to go ahead and attend the She Speaks conference, even though it wasn't in person, it was online. In fact, I wouldn't have been able to attend it if it hadn't been online. I had wanted to go for a few years, but it was a little out of budget and a little out of, my vacation time plans. And this year, because the whole world went virtual, She Speaks was offered online. I was able to go. And if I had ever had the money to go in person, I don't know if I ever would have met Mary. I might have been shy. I might have been, busy talking to the, I don't know, 5 people that I had met and not talked to more people. But they had this neat chat. And throughout She Speaks, as the speakers were presenting, people were saying things in the chat, little comments about what the speakers were talking about, or little personal notes about themselves. And because of that, I managed to meet a whole lot of people, but I also saw Mary say something about living 30 minutes away from me. And I went, oh my goodness. And Mary reached out and said, well, we need to hang. And I said, well, you're exactly right. So God works in wonderful ways if we just show up and take advantage of the opportunities that He's giving us, even though they're different than what they've been before. So I hope that as 2020 is over and 2021 is starting, you've become comfortable with the shifting opportunities that you've seen over the past year. Things are different this January than they were last January, right? But I hope that this year in 2021, you're going to meet people you wouldn't have met otherwise. You're going to do things you wouldn't have done otherwise. And you're going to be inspired by stories like Mary's today. So, Mary, I am so glad you're here. And you're actually not 30 minutes away from me today. You're across the country visiting family, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm all the way up in the Great White North of Wisconsin right now.
Oh, man. So you're staying warm indoors. That's good.
More or less. This room is not the warmest, but I am at least not sitting out on the porch, which was the other option.
Oh, gosh. Well, it was nice of them to go play outside.
Yes.
So, have you done anything fun in the snow here?
So it has snowed about 10 inches since I've been up here. And we went out, we made snow angels. We attempted a snowball fight, but the snow is not packing snow. And so we're waiting until it warms up just a little bit to make snowballs and snowmen. So for sure, by the time I leave here, as long as we get a little bit warmer temperatures, we're going to build massive snowmen because there's just too much snow to not do that. And I am actually having my first ski lesson ever on Tuesday. So I'm
Wow.
excited and nervous.
I guess. Oh, well, good luck with that. So you would not have been able to go skiing a few years ago. You wouldn't have been able to do most of what you're doing now
Yeah.
just a few years ago. Tell us about what happened.
Instead of starting a few years ago, I'll start 10 and a half years ago.
Okay.
I was in August of 2010. I was in good physical condition. I was super excited. My friends and I, we were those people who go hiking, camping, and we like all met up in Utah and we drove up to the south corner of Colorado and the Utah border and we hiked Kings Peak. So it's a 14K mountain and we did that. It was awesome. And so, for anybody who's been hiking and does mountain climbing, you carry a lot of gear with you. So, I was carrying about a 70-pound pack because I was carrying the stove and all the tents and stuff, and my friends were carrying a little bit less. And then just about a month and a half later, in October, on October 10th or October 9th, 2010, I was riding in a car with my brother in law, sister, and my niece when we were rear ended. And
Oh.
because of how I was sitting in the car, I was in the front seat, leaning into my seatbelt, facing my brother in law and talking to my sister in the back seat. I tore almost every muscle from my neck to my hip on the right side of my body.
Mm.
And I had a massive concussion that went undiagnosed for 4.5 months, because when I talked to the police officers afterwards, they're like, well, it's your choice. I was like, I had this headache. It's really bad. I feel sick, like, but otherwise I feel fine. And I just felt jittery. And so I didn't go to the hospital. And I waited a couple days, went to a chiropractor, and they're like, you're really messed up. Like, you might consider going to a doctor. Fast forward, it took me about a month to get in to see a regular doctor because of where I was living at the time. I wasn't in a city, I was in a smaller town in Oklahoma. And that doctor was like, well, if you've been this hurt, you would have gone to the ER or driven to Oklahoma City to get help there. So I kind of felt awful and brushed it off and thought I might be going a little bit crazy because I was unable to open doors. I had to quit carrying my laptop bag. I couldn't carry a purse.
Oh.
Literally went from being able to carry backpacks to barely being able to hold on to a laptop, and had to have my coworkers open doors for me because I didn't have enough physical strength to open the doors. And that's when I found out from my physical therapist how much muscle I had damaged in my back. So no broken bones or anything, but lots of muscle damage. And during that time frame, I had daily migraines. So I'm going to work, I'm showing up, I'm not sleeping, I have daily migraines. My doctor's telling me that I should be getting better. My physical therapist is telling me I shouldn't be able to walk.
Mm.
And then I start forgetting whole days. And
Oh
I
gosh.
stopped being able to do addition, which, as an engineer who had near photographic memory, to not being able to add $6, $6 plus $5 when I'm writing a tip, I started bawling in a restaurant because I went, I was like, what is wrong? And I'm in pain all the time, can't figure this out. And I'm like, God, just let me die. Like, that literally was how I felt, because there was so much physical, mental, emotional drain. And I'm like, God, like, why didn't you let me die? And then that January, so that was October, January 10th, I flew to Guatemala in the middle of all this to do a 1 week missions trip in Guatemala. And even though I was taking, pain medications while I was there, I realized there, like, I had something to offer. I could still make kids laugh and play. And yes, I was in pain and I hurt and I couldn't do the things I did before, but I wasn't useless, which is what my brain kept telling me. And God opened that door for Guatemala months before the wreck ever happened. And then I come back, and literally the day I get back, I drive to Wichita to go pick up my truck. And I'm starting with a new boss that Monday. So this is Sunday night. I have a brand new boss the next morning. I had to move. I wasn't able to even finish moving because I was starting work in a different city, and I had to move the following weekend. So I literally was living out of my backpack at the time. And so I'm driving from Wichita to Oklahoma City to my new job, and I hit black ice on a bridge.
Oh my goodness.
And when I get across this bridge, my truck ended up, so if the road is going this way, my truck ended up perpendicular to the road
Oh.
with my cab on the road and the back end of my truck over who knows what. I knew it was a huge ditch in a river. And the voice in my head was like, if you want to die, don't do anything. But if you want to live, put it in reverse, stupid. Because a semi was already halfway across the bridge, barreling towards my door. And I threw my truck in reverse and hit the gas as hard as I could, not knowing what was behind me. And that
Oh,
semi clipped my license plate holder and shattered it on the front of my truck. And I ended up in the ditch, and there were 3 cars down there. And
mm,
the people ran over and said, "How did you do that? We don't know how you got your car in reverse fast enough to get out of the way. It was seconds from when your car stopped sliding to when you were in reverse going into this ditch." And I said, "It was God.
yeah.
And I want to live because He has something else for me." And so my mindset changed from, "Why didn't you let me die?" to, "Why did you let me live?" Because I didn't know what the plans were, but I knew God had something for me. And I wasn't going to throw that away. And I'm not going to lie, it is hard when I had lost everything that I felt like the world valued me for. I had no
Yeah.
physical strength. My mind was shattered. Like in reality, I mean, I had no memory. I had to figure out how in the world was I going to do this new job that I didn't know how to do with a new boss that didn't know me, didn't know the history. Um, so physically, mentally, emotionally, I was tired all the time because I was sleeping 15 minutes to 2 hours a night because of the concussion created insomnia. And so everything there was broken, but I had that spiritual side that God had revealed something was in store for me. And all I had to do was keep pushing. And it's not easy. Like, it is not easy when you're in those depths of, well, what have I lost? I lost everything the world thought would be valuable in terms of personal self. And it took me probably another month and a half, honestly, because even though I knew God had a purpose for me, I was still looking at how much I had lost. And
Yeah.
then I changed it. I felt like God told me one day, He's like, "I told you to take every thought, take it captive to Christ, and think on good things." He's like, "This is the day you're going to draw a line in the sand." And I said, "Okay, this is a new beginning. I may never get back to where I was before, but I know I can get better from where I am now if I stop focusing on this negative part and take every thought captive to Christ."
Mm.
So I started counting how many steps I could take up the stairs before I had to stop because I would get so winded. And I couldn't even make it up one flight of stairs. I couldn't make it from the ground floor to the first, to one
Yeah.
floor up. And, I would count 12 steps and I would celebrate the day I made it to step 13 before I had to stop. And I celebrated the day that I could walk across the parking lot without literally having to like laser focus on my destination because my balance was so off that when I wasn't touching things, I would start to tip.
Ooh,
I couldn't take an elevator, and people thought I was just being super healthy, but I couldn't take an elevator for 4 years because it made me black out. And I
oh,
found myself in the bottom of the elevator twice, and that was enough for me to just be like, that's not going to work for me. So at first, my office was on the second floor when I moved to my new job. And then later, they moved me to the fourth floor. But by
oh,
that point, I had built enough strength to be like, okay, I can do this and take the stairs and be okay. Like,
yeah.
it might take me a little bit of time. And in terms of memory, God gave me like this. Honestly, I felt like it was this revelation of, if my memory wasn't good, what do people do who don't have great memories? They write things down. So I had sticky notes everywhere. I had sticky notes in my car that said, like, and you may laugh at this, but I had a note that said, "Your name is Mary Bruce. You work for X company. The address is this. Your office is this. Put it in your GPS." And so I'd go to my car and read my sticky note that was on my steering wheel. And I put in the address into my phone and I'd drive to work and I'd walk up the stairs to my office and my sticky note said, "Read this." And it was my journal, my work journal. And I had notes of every single conversation that I had written down in there. and I had stars next to the ones that were important. And I would write down my task list for the next day before I left work every single day so that when I arrived, I would know what I needed to do, what order I needed to do it in, because some days I could show up and remember, and some days the prior day would be a blank slate. And so, you know, that was all good. I started working towards that, was meeting with neurologists and physical therapists and chiropractors. And about a year later, so I'm still having daily migraines. And about a year later, 1 week before my 25th birthday, the neurologist said, I'm really sorry. I see that your birthday's next week, but there's nothing more I can do for you. I would highly recommend you get on permanent disability because you will never not have migraines. You will never not have pain. You will not recover from insomnia. You will always have memory loss. This is your new normal. And at 25 years old, being told I should be permanently disabled was very disheartening.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I told him, I was like, what does this gain me? And he said, well, 6 months of protection at your job. So if a miracle happens in the next 6 months, you'd be protected. And after that, you know, you might get higher pay on your disability. And I said, well, I don't want to be labeled disabled. I think God's going to make a miracle at some point. It may not be in the next 6 months, but I trust and I pray and I believe. And I was like, and I've been able to work this far without any issues. And had been a year and a couple months at that point, year and a month. And so I was like, okay, we're going to keep going. And it's crazy because I look at that and I go, God laid foundations in my life that allowed me to do those things. And he gave me these revelations. And, every single year for the next 6 years, I had an injury. And the worst one was year 7. So Christy, that's the injury that you know about. I had finally started to get better. I'd had almost a year with no accidents. And I was carrying, let's be honest, when you're tired, you don't make the best decisions in life. And it was the end of a work week. I'd worked really long hours that week. I needed to bring some books out to my parents' house. And so I was super tired. I was cranky. I had already carried a whole bunch of stuff out to the car, and I had one more box. It was literally the last thing I needed to bring out, and then I was going to be on the road. And I stepped out of my porch, and I'm holding a huge box of books, which, if anybody knows me, I love books. So it's not a surprise that it was a large box of books that led to my downfall because I couldn't see the steps on the porch, and I literally missed all the steps with this box of books in my hands.
Oh.
And I fell. There's 3 steps, so I fell down 3 steps. And I still held on to the books because they were way more important than me, obviously. And so I landed, and I'm like, that's real bad. Like, I felt things pop. I was like, I still have to go to to my parents' house, drop this stuff off. So I drove out, and by the time I got there, it was about a 2.5-hour drive. I was in so much pain. Like, my shoulder hurt, my hip hurt, my back felt like it was on fire. And like, I knew something was really wrong. And I waited until Monday because that's what I do. And I go in, and they're like, we can tell you partially dislocated your shoulder, you partially dislocated your hip, and we're pretty sure you bulged a disc in your back, like really bad, because of how the pain was radiating down both my legs. And they're like, you can't lift anything. Like, you're on a 5-pound weight restriction, period, end of story, because of how badly this is bulging. And if you do the wrong thing right now, you could be permanently, like, actually lose, your leg mobility. So I did.
So you went from forever to recovery, and now they're saying you could be forever again.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, God, like, I'm going to actually listen this time. I'm not going to go do stupid things. So I didn't do stupid things for 6 months. And then they're like, okay, you can lift a little bit more weight. So that was, 5 months of not lifting more than 5 pounds.
Mm.
And then I get to month 6. They're like, you can lift something. And I said it wasn't stupid for 6 months. I was really stupid month 6. And my parents' refrigerator at their house died. And it's in the middle of nowhere. And there was a refrigerator on sale at Lowe's. And so I bought them a refrigerator. They loaded it into the car, but I get it out to their house and I go, I don't know how to get this out of my car other than to push it out myself. So I did. And that started another 6 months
Oh,
of not being able
man.
to lift more than 5 pounds because it reset everything from the prior 6 months. And so it was just over a year of not being able to lift more than 5 pounds when I was finally released to actually lift weights. And I'll be honest, a year of not lifting anything makes you very, very weak.
Yeah.
And in my case, I had eaten a lot of food and it made me very fluffy. And,
When you can't do anything. Yeah.
when you can't do anything and all you want to do is eat, it happens. And, I looked at, this was actually 3 years ago, January 1st. I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to just be healthy. My word for that year was healthy. And I'm like, I don't know what this looks like right now, but I know I can't keep going the way that I'm going. So this was 7 months before I was released to work out. And I was like, I'll do Whole30 twice. And I started Whole30 and I did the first month and I did the second month. And then I actually had a friend reach out as a health and fitness coach. And she's like, can you try this? And it's crazy. Like God used a friend being, doing things to actually change my life. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that, but it's like, okay, by changing what I was eating and actually learning how the body worked and why it worked the way that it did, I was able to reduce the inflammation and pain in my body to where I've not taken ibuprofen. I've taken it 6 times since March of 2018, whereas before I was taking it 3 to 5 days a week minimum. And we're talking 800 to 2,400 milligrams of ibuprofen a day for 7 years. And so, God is good because I don't have migraines anymore. I now, I went from bicep curling nothing. Like I started with 3-pound weights. I could do 6 bicep curls with 3-pound weights. And then I did the last 4 with nothing. And I did workouts for 2 weeks where I didn't lift weights because I couldn't even do 3 pounds. And now I bicep curl 20 to 25-pound dumbbells all the time. So, like Christy talked about God allowing things to happen that I couldn't have done years ago. I mean, I was told I'd never run again. I was doing a running program in October, which was 10 years after the wreck.
That's wonderful.
And I ran like for the first time in 10 years. And so things that doctors said would never happen happened because God is good. And, I know there are people who have dealt with pain for a lot longer than me, but I'm telling you, don't give up because no matter where you're at in your journey, no matter how low you feel, no matter how useless the devil tells you you are worthwhile because God made you and he has you here for a purpose. And sitting back and saying, God, what is this purpose? I'm just tired of it. You can question God. Job questioned God, but he still had faith that God could use him and change his life and change his world. And I beg you to be like Job and in the midst of your trial, still believe that God can use you because it may be you that makes a phone call to somebody and saves their life. It
Yeah.
could be you that writes a part of your journey down and it changes someone else's life. And all you have to do is take action and have faith, because sitting back and saying, well, I'm just going to wait for God to bring it to me, that inactivity allows the devil to fill your thoughts and mind with whatever. And
Yeah.
I will tell you, being inactive and not doing something, those were my hardest days. Like, people ask me, why did I stay working when I hurt so badly? It was because I took days off and all I thought about was everything that I lost. Like, those days weren't good for me. They were so much harder to make it through than going to work and doing something. And I might have been slower at it than what I thought I should be, or I might not feel as effective, but my presence at my job was enough to make someone else's life different, because I showed up every day and it made my life different by being there and doing something. So I told myself, God, every single day that I show up to work, I will do my best. It may not be where I wish my best could be, but I will do my best for you. And I will show up with a smile on my face, because I have joy, and it is not because of my circumstances. I choose it. I choose joy every day, on my good days and my bad. And I'm just going to say, it is not easy to start, but once you start that joy journey, like, it is so much easier to get back to it. So, like, I I'm just imploring you, know you are worthwhile no matter what, no matter where you're at on your journey, and try to choose joy every day, because you have something to be joyful about. And what I did to start mine was every morning, I told myself it was going to be a month. It ended up being about 5 months. Every single morning, I had to write down 3 things that I was thankful for.
Mm.
And they had to be different. They could
Yeah.
not be the same things. So, you know, if you're doing 3 things a day for a month, that's 90 different things in your life that you can be joyful and thankful for.
Yes.
And if you do it for a whole year, I mean, it's amazing what you can amass. And on the days that you start feeling low and you start reading back through those thankful thoughts, I mean, your life is changed because you're seeing it from the right perspective. I mean, and I know that sounds crazy, but choosing thankfulness and joy, it's hard because our
Yeah.
minds try to take us to the negative every day, but it is so worth taking those 5 minutes. I mean, literally, it took me less than 5 minutes a day to write down 3 thoughts. And the more you practice it, the more that even on the bad days, because I'd have bad days. I have days where, I mean, I slipped and fell my last week of my running program
Oh.
and I hurt my leg. And I was supposed to do my first 5K in 10 years, like running it. Like, I had walked a few in the middle of that, but I was like, I'm going to run a 5K for the first time in 10 years. And that was so hard the day that I fell, because I was like, it's been 10 years in the making and I can't make it one more week. And my
Right.
mind started going through all these things that was like, oh no. And then I realized I don't have to choose this. I can still walk. So I
Yeah.
showed up that Saturday and I walked that 5K, and I did it with a smile on my face. And I even ran the very last little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so cool that I can still choose this, even
Yes.
when it's hard. So,
Well, because you had to make a choice. And, God went before you so many times. He went before you and he had already planned the trip to Guatemala because he knew you would need to see that you had a purpose, even though you lost the things the world valued about you.
yep.
He gave you that opportunity to make the choice because he knew that choice matters. Just like in the Garden of Eden, making the choice to obey, making the choice all our lives to look for God's purpose matters. And then you had to make a choice while you were living this new life to stop dwelling on the old life. And if you guys hear my cat purring, I apologize. but you made a choice to stop dwelling on the phase of life you weren't in. We're
Yep.
eternal. How many phases of life are we going to be in, right? Our period here, anything you're going through right now isn't permanent. There's going to be other things, other shifts, but we get so attached to, um, what we can do for a while. And you had to make a choice to just let go of that because dwelling on it was keeping you down. It was keeping you from living in the present. And then you made that choice for gratitude every day, things you were thankful for every day that continued to help you until with that I would be terrified if I were 10 years I finally was going to do a 5K and then I fell after all those accidents and all that pain. I would just be like, oh no, it's all going to happen again. And instead of saying that, you just went, I'm going to show up for life.
Yep.
And I love that. You've given us, I think, enough to really just pray through and think about for probably the rest of the month. I love it. And I didn't mean to just totally interrupt. You get me excited, and I love your story.
No,
You,
you're good.
um, you're actually your showing up thing has helped other people. Your friend came to you and said, "Hey, I want to try this. Will you try this with me?" And you learned how to change your body's responses so that
Yep.
you are now healthy. And I think you also just found a whole group of people who kind of support one another. I got to hang out with you guys or ladies one Saturday, and it was so fun. Just the support among your friends. So, what is it that started that shift for you? What have you found that works for you?
Um, so I do I'm actually now a health and fitness coach, just like my friend.
Uh-huh.
And it's through the company Beachbody. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but
Mhm.
if you would like more information, please reach out to me because I understand setbacks. I understand having to do things differently if you are injured. Um, so I can help people through that. I work with nutrition as well as workouts. And I would just tell you do something like move a little every day, even when it hurts, because sometimes that pain is because your muscles need stretched. So
Mhm.
doing a little bit of stretching will help you. But if you need any of those things, please feel free to reach out to me. You can get a hold of me on Facebook.
Mhm.
It's Muscles with Mary. And I know
Muscles
that
with
sounds crazy.
Mary.
Muscles with Mary. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Mary C. Bruce Music. So I would love to help anybody work with your issues with your body, and everything's online. So you're not going to have to do anything in person unless you want to. We do try to meet up every 3 months in various places. So there's different groups all around the country, and we can help you with that too. So
Awesome. And I am so excited about the other thing I want to bring up. So you were like, yeah, I don't know much about this yet, but you gave me permission to share your exciting news. So you have actually been chosen to do something that used to be a total dream of mine. So tell us about that. You're
um,
going to
so
be in, yeah, tell us.
so uh, for those of you who I did mention my career was an engineer. I worked
Mhm,
for an oil and gas company for a decade, and I did love it. I loved working with people. I was good at my job, and with the downturn in the oil industry, I ended up getting let go. And that has opened up doors for me that I could talk about on a whole different podcast of God's timing because
we might have to.
that was crazy. But this last year, some doors opened up for me to start doing acting, which, as Christy said, was a dream of hers, but it was something that I used to write plays and would perform plays with my sisters and brothers for our parents, literally all growing up. So I didn't do theater like in the normal sense, but I did that. But now I've been involved as an extra in some movies in Oklahoma. And I've taken some classes and I've made some connections and I've been auditioning for roles. And I will have my first big acting role in a movie. And so I'm really excited about that. It'll start filming in the next, actually, probably within the next month. So we'll be filming this year and I believe it'll come out next year. So I'm
Awesome. So
super
next
excited.
year, and it's called
Crossfire. So,
Crossfire next year.
yes.
And it was adorable. You were sharing your headshots and giving us all a chance to participate in like helping you pick the best one. And it's kind of neat when you get people to be part of such an exciting thing with you. I love that.
Yes, I'm honestly I never dreamed that I would go down this route, and I have honestly just been praying. I'm like, God, open whatever doors you want to open, and give me the courage to walk through it because it feels like it would be so much easier to go back to engineering. And I've still been applying to engineering roles because I do love that as a career, but the doors that have been opening have been in this different direction, and I'm like, all right, God, I'm walking in faith and going where you're opening these doors, and we'll see. So
I
pretty
love
cool.
it. Saying yes to God is kind of a neat thing, isn't it?
You never know where you're going to end up, and it is honestly terrifying, but it is really cool when you say yes to God that you'll see everything in your life shift because you'll
Yes.
see him working in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. So I
So
highly
true.
recommend it, even if it's scary.
That's so true. And for those of you watching or listening, I just want to say, you know, Mary's story is her own, but you have a unique story. God is doing things in your life and has already gone ahead of you and prepared things you don't even know about yet. So say yes to him this year and don't let the long stretch of days where you're just showing up and struggling, don't let those derail you from knowing, from trusting that God is working and his time is right and he's not wasting today. He's still showing up for you. So God bless you and share this with your friends. Thank you so much, Mary, for being here today. And I'm just so glad that we met and that you were willing to share with us. God
Thank
bless
you,
you too.
Christy. God
Bye.
bless.